All right, so this is my honest review of The Last of Us TV show. So, The Last of Us TV show is based on a game of the same name developed by Naughty Dog. And if half y'all don't know who Naughty Dog is perhaps one of the most famous, influential game developing studios, period, end of story, ever. Because they made such games as Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, the Uncharted series, and of course, what we are talking about today, The Last of Us. I'm telling you right now, this game is probably touted as one of the best games ever. And I will admit, it is an amazing, amazing game. And the original Last of Us game came out in 2013 on the PS3. And it was so highly regarded, guess what? 1 year later, they remastered it, which I don't know why. So anyways, we're on the doorstep right now of the 10th anniversary of the release of the first game, right? And they just re-released it again, and they're calling it The Last of Us Episode 1. So now we've gotten some of the backstory out of the way and talked about Naughty Dog and everything. We're going to start talking about the show. I'm giving you guys a heads up. Guess what? There's going to be spoilers about the show, and there's going to be spoilers about the game. So if you don't want the game or the TV show spoiled in any kind of way, just hit the next button. Even though I'd like to have you guys watch. So anyways, the main overview of the show and the game is basically the fungi have taken over, and lack of a better term, people have basically become zombies, right? So now you get to meet the main character. His name is Joel. He is a rough and tumble guy that does whatever it takes to survive, right? And then you also meet the young teen that was bitten and is immune to the fungi named Ellie. And we're going to keep talking about them through this whole entire review of the show. Most people so far I've noticed have been real big fans of the show, and I think the show's mid at best, right? And I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunities that we'll talk about as I break down and we review every episode, basically. I think that there's a bunch of stuff they could have done. As of right now, the first episode was released in the middle of January of 2023 of this year, right? So far, that was for the first season. They've already announced that there's going to be a second season, which makes sense, granted, because there is The Last of Us Episode 1, and there's going to be Last of Us Episode 2, right? So, I'm feeling it. Anyways, the lead actors and actresses for this show is going to be Pedro Pascal. He plays Joel. I think he was an excellent casting. He is Joel because he looks a lot like the main character from the game, where Bella Ramsey was casted as Ellie. Unpopular opinion, I think she was a terrible casting as Ellie. I personally, yeah. And we'll get more into that as we continue on. So the first two episodes, I'm going to basically group the first two episodes together. And I'm only doing that because it was basically shot for shot almost from the game. It was amazing, especially when the build-up of the first episode where Joel and his daughter and his brother Tommy, they end up, building up, and then they jump into the pickup truck and they try to get away. You end up with the gut-wrenching feeling when the soldiers get the orders to, basically take care of Joel and his daughter, and they open fire, and Tommy shows up just a second too late to save Sarah, Joel's daughter, right? And the introduction of the Fireflies and the introduction of Ellie and finding out that, she's immune. And on top of that, the Fireflies basically asking Joel and Tess, who you find out is like, she's basically Joel's girlfriend, wife, whatever you want to call it, right? That they need to get this girl to the Fireflies out west at one of the medical facilities out there. And Tess ultimately sacrifices herself for the greater good to save Ellie, to save Joel, so that they can get the potential cure, right? Bam. first 2 episodes, like I said, pulled basically directly from the game. And it was amazing. I was like, holy crap. And then we get into episode 3. And granted, episode 3 is basically where the show tries to really take its own spin on the series. And in my opinion, I feel like the backstory of Bill and him meeting Frank and the love story, I feel like it could have been half the episode. It didn't have to be an entire episode. And then on top of that, something that just irked me when it came to Bill's character, who was Nick Offerman, a.k.a. Ron Swanson, right? It's the fact that he is a paranoid, and I mean paranoid survivalist. I don't want anybody on my property. I, have this entire town locked down. Is out there in the middle of the street shooting at the raiders as they're trying to invade his compound. That's how he gets shot. It just, it's a beautiful story. I'll give him that, where, he falls in love. But I feel like the entire episode, I could have watched the first 5-10 minutes of the episode and the last 5-10 minutes of the episode, and I would have been able to carry on with the show as if nothing happened. I did not need an entire episode dedicated to Bill and Frank. My opinion, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but it just, to me, it didn't add anything to the story whatsoever, especially with the main characters, right? Because granted, it did basically tell Joel, hey, you need to do what you got to do for your loved ones, for your people around you. Okay, I can get behind that. But to me, a whole episode dedicated to that for something that absolutely did nothing for the game, yeah. Then we get into the end of the episode where basically Ellie goes down into the bowels of this gas station, or the basement, and goes and cuts open the zombie's face. That to me was where I was like, man, they really missed the nail with Bella Ramsey. I'm not saying she's a terrible actress, but I think they could have gotten a better decision when it came to casting Ellie. So then we move into episode 4. And this episode sets up for another big difference between the game and the show. Which, I mean, this one wasn't too bad, right? Where it takes place in Kansas City. Vice taking place in Pittsburgh. The opening of the episode for episode 4 basically opens up like in the game, where you and Ellie are leaving Bill after you get the battery. And, you make it into the city, and basically you get ambushed by a bunch of raiders. And Joel ends up having to take a couple of them out. And the last, raider basically jumps on him, or raider, bandit, whatever you want to call him, and is choking him out. And Ellie steps in and kills that man. And that's when Joel's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, this isn't the first time I've had to do this. Which builds on the character. I like that. But another detour that kind of the show takes, which I kind of like, is the villain, who's the leader of the bandits, named Kathleen. And she was a great actress, because I absolutely despise that lady. She was that was one of the good parts of the show. And she just made me hate her. And she's on looking out for this guy named Henry and his brother Sam. And I'll admit, the changes to Sam's character I actually enjoyed, because they made Sam deaf. They made it hard for him to communicate, and they just made it more like a real world. And it was just gritty, and just that young man who played Sam, very talented young man. I'll give him that. So then, as we're leaving episode 4, because at that point Sam and Henry are holding Ellie and Joel at gunpoint, right? Which leads us into episode 5. They leave us on that cliffhanger, which I'm cool with, because I did that when I recorded my playthrough of The Last of Us. So in episode 5, they definitely take another twist from the series, which is Henry, Sam, Joel, and Ellie have to escape the city. So instead of like basically traversing the city and getting to the bridge to get away, right? They end up deciding to escape the city through a tunnel. And the tunnels were where they trapped the infected. And basically, they take this out of the game as well. As they're trying to get away, there's a house at the end of the alley, or the cul-de-sac, I guess you can call it. And there's a sniper posted up there, which is one of the pain in the butt parts of playing through the game, was traversing that, because of course you got a whole bunch of guys there, and get into the house to take the sniper down. And then once you do that, guess what? The gang of bandits show up, which is just like in the show. The bandits show up, and when they show up, they accidentally open the tunnels that unleash the infected. Now, real quick, have you noticed something that we're 5 episodes in. I think they've come across the infected twice. I have not really talked about the infected at all when it comes to the show. And in my opinion, I feel like the infected, when it came to this show, really played second fiddle to just how cruel human nature can be, especially when you're put into a really, really, lack of a better word, shit situation. And you have to go through and you have to figure out how to survive. And people, human nature, when it comes to that, is going to bring out the worst in everybody. But I feel like they could have used the infected to add more suspense to different scenes of the show, or just keep the scenes the same from the show to the game, which we'll get into. But anyways, as soon as that tunnel opens, the infected break out, and guess what? Our boy Sam gets bitten. And it's really heartbreaking and sad to see Ellie communicating with Sam. And he has like one of those etch and sketch boards, right? Where he writes down everything and then, clears it out. And it makes me sad to see when Ellie's like, my blood is the cure. I can save you. And then she cuts open her hand and is rubbing it in Sam's wound, just to wake up the next day. And they pull it directly from the game where Henry ended up having to shoot Sam. And then Henry, puts himself out of his misery because he can't deal with what he had to do, which it just plays into the feels, man. And I thought that part was like, it was really sad and really, it just grabs you. So now we're moving into episode 6. Episode 6 is basically winter time from the game, right? Or fall, yeah. And Ellie and Joel finally make it into Jackson, Wyoming. And guess who else is in Jackson, Wyoming that Joel and Ellie have been looking for? Tommy. Tommy is Joel's younger brother. And it's very heartwarming to see like Joel really, coming in, talking with Tommy, and, being able to, like, Tommy being like, hey, this is my wife, so on and so forth. So, of course, you know what Joel has to do? He's really trying to hand off Ellie like a hot potato because he's grown attached to this girl. She's roughly the same age as his daughter, and he just can't deal with the loss again of, basically, lack of a better word, another daughter. And after some brooding, Joel is like, you know what? I've decided to take Ellie to the Firefly Medical Facility in Utah. So with them doing that, they make it there. And just like the games, basically the medical facility is like returning to the earth. The buildings are breaking down. The weeds are taking over. Trees are growing. There's wild test monkeys running all over this medical facility. And when Joel and Ellie get into the medical facility, they realize they're too late. There's nobody there. Just like in the game, nobody there. So they find out They actually have to go to Utah, right? Plot twist. And this is where, like I said earlier in the video, I think they should have left something in the game. Like from the game, I mean. And that is, this would have been the perfect part where when they're in the medical facility, Joel and Ellie, they end up getting separated, right? And basically, Joel has to traverse the hospital to get to Ellie. And when he finally gets to her, he ends up in basically a scuffle with one of the bandits that's there, that's trying to, basically do bandit things, I guess you can say, because Lord knows what they're looking for. And while they're in this scuffle, he falls off of the second story and he gets impaled, right? And that is how Joel falls ill. Where in the TV show, it's a BS scuffle between him and the bandit, which breaks the baseball bat, which causes Joel to get stabbed by this rusty aluminum baseball bat. And I feel like this was another missed part from the game. They should have just left it alone. But instead they're like, you know what? We're not going to add the suspense. We're just going to stab him with a rusty baseball bat. Felt kind of rushed. Guess what? You wouldn't have to be rushed if you didn't spend a whole episode talking about Bill and Frank. Anyways, we're neither here nor there. Which moves us into episode 7. Episode 7 is basically the DLC, right? And it flushes out Ellie's backstory and explains, why she said when she killed that one man in Kansas City in the TV show, Pittsburgh in the game, that wasn't the first time. And it was her best friend that she had fallen in love with, and that they were going to run away together, so on and so forth. And basically, as they're doing their thing, gallivanting around this mall, one of the infected comes out, bites them both, which is how Ellie got bitten, and found out, hey, I'm immune. And she ends up having to put her friend down, which is terrible, but really adds to Ellie's character. And I liked episode 7, right? Now, moving in to episode 8, which episode 8, I kind of wish that they would have left the iconic bunny scene where the bunny crawls out of the hole. The lady's sitting there like, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And then the bunny gets shot and she starts crying. I wish they would have left that in there. Instead, they didn't. And this is where Ellie is going out to gather food to try to, do the best she can to survive and to be able to nurse Joel back to health. All right, this is great. Let's see where this is going. Well, while all this is going on, she runs into David. And David is this cult leader that is just, So they run into each other while they're hunting. And guess what? Instead of doing like they did in the game, which is make Ellie work with David, right? And then you guys work together. And, of course, Ellie shoots the deer, which causes David to find out where she is, right? Because she tracks the deer and David's standing over it. And he sends off his, crony to go get the, antibiotics for Joel, basically. And then you two end up fighting this entire time. All these infected. The show doesn't do that. They stand there. They go into a shed. They get warm. And then dude brings back the antibiotics. Like it just totally was a missed opportunity again with the infected. Because they're nowhere to be found, bro. So anyways, this religious leader ends up capturing Ellie after going through the town. Okay? Very similar to the game. He captures her, and while they're talking, it dawns on Ellie that, wait, you're feeding basically your entire congregation human remains. And then, of course, Ellie ends up biting him, ends up getting away, but instead of doing the whole long, traversal of the town, right? You end up just in the restaurant with him, and he had just scum of the earth. They kept that in there. And she takes him out. And then Joel ends up coming to, and you find out how truly cruel Joel can be against these bandits while he's trying to find out where Ellie is, because he wants to make sure that, he's keeping up his end of the bargain. And he ends up catching up with Ellie. But this was after David, the scum of the earth, does his thing. And Joel's able to find her and comfort her like the father figure that he is. It's a great episode, and it just is another tough one, because just like the game, it's just, there's some tough stuff you got to get through, but it pays off because it leads us into episode 9. And in episode 9, it's almost straight out of the game, where they're walking around Utah, they're running into the giraffes, you're seeing the city return into the earth, and just, yeah. But instead of having to go through and you feel in the game, my chest, I was like, da-da-da-da-da, because you're worried, because you get to the point where Joel ends up getting bumped off and there's rushing water and Ellie jumps in the water to save him. But guess what? Ellie doesn't know how to swim. So anyways, you have to go after Ellie through the water tunnels to save her, to bring her to the surface. And then you run into the fireflies. Well, instead of a big, ridiculous scene like that, you're just walking around, enjoying the town, trying to find out where the medical facility is. Next thing you know, Ellie and freaking Joel flashbang, and they wake up in a hospital, right? And that's where they're told, hey, Ellie is being prepped for surgery, and she is not going to make it. That's when Joel goes full on John Wick on their ass. I have to admit, I was like, oh, ooh, ooh. Joel went full on John Wick, took down the entire hospital. He gets Ellie, gets in the elevator, rides on down, and then he ends up shooting Marlene, who tries to convince Joel that Ellie is the answer. But guess what? Joel has other plans. He steals a car, and they're going back to Jackson to go live with Tommy and them. And while they're driving back, Joel kind of tells Ellie a lie, and that is, she ain't special. There's all kinds of people out there that are immune, and that the Fireflies are no longer looking for a cure. Roll credits. Like I said, there's parts of the game that really they kept it in there and really stood out, and I was like, damn. But at the same token, I do understand the fact that they can't just, hey, let me get the gas mask on and, we're not going to deal with the spores. You're not going to have people sitting there watching, Joel walking around for 20 minutes looking for collectibles. I understand that 125%. But I don't understand why there was a severe lack of infected, and that was it budget, was it actors, I don't know. I can purely speculate that it was probably due to budget, but I feel like the lack of infected, which was a lack of suspense, which left a lot of things kind of blah, is why I feel like The Last of Us as a TV show was just mid. There was a lot of people that were like, oh, it's amazing. Like one of my buddies, he played the game and he watched the show, and he loved both of them. But for me, it didn't live up to the hype. I'm not asking for, Walking Dead season 1, 2, and 3, because after that it was kind of garbage. I'm just saying. I was just asking for a show in a post-apocalyptic world where survival is needed. Did I get it? Yeah. Because there was a lot of cruelty. There was, a lot of heartwarming stories as well. And how it ended, like I said, it ended just like the game, which chef's kiss to that. And the first 2 episodes, chef's kiss to that, because they almost went frame for frame when it came to the game, and it came to the ending. You know, the ending and the beginning, I mean. But, meh. And like I said, Bella Ramsey, when it came to her playing as Ellie, there was stuff where it was a hit, there was stuff where it was a miss. But overall, I would say she was definite miss for me. Unpopular opinion. Overall, I give the show a solid 6 out of 10, like a 5.5, maybe a 6, but I round it up. I'll be nice. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. And they're already saying there's going to be a season 2. I'm cool with. But it just, hopefully it's going to be better than the second game. But I'm not going to hold my breath because, like, bro, you were handed a masterpiece and it was just mid in my opinion. But until next time, thank you guys for listening. Hey, leave down in the comment section. How'd y'all feel about it? Like, did you all really enjoy the game? Did you guys really, like, you know, enjoy the TV show? Did you enjoy both? Let me know. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Bye.